the pen tool. And in order to use the pen tool, what you're going to have to do is go to Illustrator and create a new series of artboards. And this is going to be called PenTool _ Demo _ your last name. And 8.5 by 11 should be fine. Vertical or portrait orientation will work for this project. This should probably already be set up, but mine's CMYK and 300 ppi. And then once you've got that set up, just hit OK. And you should have something that looks like this. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have to place some objects for us to trace. So if you go File and Place, and at this point you should have already downloaded the PenTool Demo app or demo folder in Dropbox. So this is probably in your downloads folder, but in my case it's already on my computer. So I'm going to select the circle and hit place, and then wherever I want to put it is fine. Obviously this is a little bit large, so what you're going to do is just hold down the Shift key, and while you're holding down Shift, just click and drag and shrink the circle a little bit so it's more manageable. Now, in order to trace this, we have to do a couple things. First of all, it's a moving object, so if I'm tracing, I can accidentally hit anchor points, which is not good. I don't want to move it, I don't want it in the way, I want it stagnant. The other thing is, this is a really dark circle, and if I try and trace over it, it's going to be very hard to see. So what I want you to do is go over to the corner, and you should have this tab that says Stroke, Gradient, and Transparency. If Transparency is not already selected, just click it, and you should have an option that says Opacity. Now, making sure that the object itself is selected, which means it's in blue, click this, and click the slider and drop it down to like 30% or so. It doesn't quite matter where it is, you just don't want it so dark that you can't see your work on top of it. Once you've dropped down the opacity, we're going to go down to our layers panel. And the layers panel in Photoshop is basically a system of organization. If you've stored files on your computer and you keep them in subfolders, so you might have a folder for this class and you might have a folder for your history class, that way you don't lose objects. This is very much the same thing. Layers function as folders, so you can store things and find them more efficiently. We're going to use them a little bit excessively for this assignment, only so that you can get in the practice of using it consistently. So if you double click your layers panel, we're going to change the layer to circle, just so that way I know that if I need to go back and edit my circle, it's under the folder that says circle versus having to click around. Because as you go, this panel is going to get filled with more and more and more and more stuff, as you probably saw in your first assignment. Now, you'll notice here I have this little eyeball. This eyeball, if I click it, just turns off the layer so I can't see it. It doesn't delete it. It just makes it temporarily invisible. And then here, this little triangle is the drop down. So basically, if I spin this, it tells me all the sub actions that I've made in my primary layer. And I want to lock my circle. So if I click this little square right here, I can lock this layer. And that way, now I can't move it, you'll see I can try and grab it, it's stagnant, so I can't mess with it. Be mindful that if I click and lock here, that means I can't draw in this layer at all. And the only way I can draw on this artboard is if I make another layer, which I'll talk to you about in just a minute. For now, let's focus on the pen tool. So I'm going to unlock this just so I can draw. And then I'm going to click the letter P for pen. Now my pen tool, yours might show up and it might have a plus symbol next to it or a minus symbol. To get these, you hit the plus or minus keys on your keyboard. These add anchor points. For now, that's not really a concern. Our goal is just going to be to create these objects as simplistically as possible. So what I want you to do is find the top center point of your circle. Your quick or snap to guides will likely tell you, given this pink line tells me that I've found the midpoint. If they don't turn on, it's not a big deal. They might just be turned off in Illustrator, so just let me know and we can address it in class. So if you go to the top and click and do not release. This is very important. You click singularly and do not release. Otherwise, you'll make a series of straight lines. So I just clicked and now I'm dragging, and you'll see how I have this handle that extends out from the middle of my anchor point. These are my Bezier handles, and what these do is they define curves. So whatever way the handle that I have is facing is going to define what way my curve is facing. So right now, because of where my handle is, it's pulled out and to the right, it's going to pull my curve slightly out to the right. So I'm going to release, and you'll see, hey, this is making a curve. I'm going to come down about a halfway or a quarter of the way and do the same thing. Click, and then I'm going to drag and release out. And make sure that you've turned off your fill. Turning off your fill, you select this little one with the little dash in it. That means that the fill is invisible. The other thing you can do, you have it here in your control panel. These little arrows determine which one you're going to work with. And then coming back to the circle, in the same fashion that we handled the first two, click singularly, do not release. Remember, I've held my mouse down this entire time and drag until it lines up. Now you'll notice it might be getting to the point where it doesn't quite want to line up. That's fine. Release, because what I can do is this is probably a result of me pulling this handle too far. And it's only slightly off. It's not a big deal, but for the sake of perfection, we're going to tweak it a little bit. And so what I can do is in process, if I hold down my Option key, now I have this little V. And I can go over, and I'm holding down Option. I didn't just click it, I'm holding it down. I can go over and grab this handle and shorten it and tweak it. Now you'll notice that when I did that, the top handle was not moving. See? So if I want the top handle to be tweaked, I'll have to adjust that one as well. But it looks like things are pretty good. So I'm going to keep working my way around the circle. Again, I'm going to come up about another quarter of the way. Click once, don't release, drag it until it lines up. And then I'm going to come back to the middle, click once, drag, and pull. Now, if I want to tweak these, the other thing that I can do is if I hit A, this is my direct selection tool. And direct selection gives you more control than quick selection because I can actually move anchor points. So if I come up to the top, I can click this and pull it and get it to line up where I want it. And I can go back and tweak these. The other thing that this gives me the option to do is to move my anchor points. Some of you have already probably been exploring with this, but if I click on the anchor points, it activates them, and what I can then do is move them to wherever I want. Obviously, this is not the set type of circle we want. It kind of looks like it's melting. To undo an action, if you click Command Z, that is the undo feature on your keyboard. So click undo and backtrack as far as needed. So this looks like a pretty good circle, and now we're going to focus on our next object. So just close this for simplicity. Just click that little triangle again so you have less clutter. And now we're going to make a new layer. At the bottom of your board, you have a few different options. You'll see there's like a little trash can. That only works if you have a selection selected. So that's why it's grayed out right now. But we have this other thing. It looks like a piece of paper. And if you hover over it, it should say Create New Layer. And that's what we're going to do. So click that, and you'll notice now I have red. And if I start to click around, everything I draw is going to have that little red line on it. So layer 2, we're going to call this heart. So if I double click on it and hit enter. Now what we're going to have to do is go back up to the place option, so file, and then under the file drop down, go to place and select the heart, then hit place and place it wherever you'd like. Again, you'll have to scale this down because that's massive. hold down Shift, click, drag to scale down, and place it accordingly. Let's zoom in, and in the same way that we did with the circle, we're going to click the slider under transparency and drop the opacity. And then click this triangle and hit the lock button so that I can't interfere with the heart. Now, to start tracing the heart, we have this one issue, which is this right here. This is a sharp shift in that curve. It's sort of changing directions. So using our pen tool, what we're going to do is we're going to immediately start by using those Bezier curves. So I'm going to find that access point, and I'm going to click once and hold it down to get my little handles, and I'm going to pull it out maybe to about here. And now that I've stretched it, I'm going to click Alt, and by clicking Alt, now I can alter just one handle. And release. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come down about as far as I think I can go and still get that curve. And that looks pretty good. I'll have to adjust that top handle a little bit, but that's easy enough to do. And now I'm going to try and get this entire curve. I don't think I can, so I'm going to come down and adjust this handle a little bit. And I'm going to come down to this point, click once, and drag until it starts to line up. And that looks pretty good. That's close enough to where I can tweak it. And now what I'm going to have to do is click Alt again. And by clicking Alt or Option, I'm going to drag this up and mirror that anchor point. And when I do this, it's going to change the curve so I can actually come back up the side of the heart. And I'm going to shorten that handle a little bit just because right now it's a little too drastic. And then make another point and just pull it. And then come back down. And you see how it's already facing in that direction, that antenna that we originally made. So just come back down. And now you should have something that looks pretty much like the heart. You'll see that there's some areas where you have to tweak. That's fine. As you do this, you'll get more comfortable and place more accurately. But in the interim, don't worry. You're welcome to go back by hitting A and to just start to alter it a little bit to get it to line up where you want it to. And that's the pen tool. So what I expect you to try to do for homework is to continue placing these objects in separate layers. So next option, you'd go File, you'd go and make a new layer first, layer 3. You'll start with the ice cream cone, title it Ice Cream, and then you'll go to the File option, hit Place, select your ice cream cone, put it on the board, and do the same thing as before. Drop the opacity, click the little triangle, lock the image, not the entire layer, and then go in and start tracing. And then once you're completed, you'll save this under File, Save As, and you'll save it in your folder on your computer as PenTool Demo, your last name, and save it as an Illustrator file.